So here's the thing. In 6 seasons and a movie, Teen Wolf has a lot of characters. Some good, some bad. Some really good, and some really bad. Today, I'll be ranking the top 3 and bottom 3 Teen Wolf characters. In this list, we're not going to be looking at side characters that get no lines, we're only considering the ones that have some sort of actual presence in the show. So, unfortunately, while I could include characters like Lydia's dad, ultimately he is just not relevant enough. Some characters that appear more often are much, much, much worse. Same goes for the other side of the coin. So, without further ado, let's take a look. This might be a hot take, but I don't think that Monroe is the worst character of the show. She's very, very low, but not the absolute bottom of the barrel. Her character motivations are understandable, and honestly pretty okay. She has personal trauma because she was very nearly a fatal victim of the Beast, so she is afraid of the supernatural characters in Beacon Hills and wants to kill them all. Some of this is influence from the Anukete, but the motivation is there underneath that. Her jump to total genocide is batshit crazy, and she directs her anger at Scott's pack, who are quite literally the only ones that are ever trying to protect people, and that's where her motivations suffer a bit. I can pass this off as Anukete influence though, since it's shoved down your throat that its influence is huge when it comes to fear. Here's where I think her character suffers. Even after the Anukete is defeated, she does not have her moment where she considers she might be wrong, and when the series ends, she's still a presence that looms over the characters. She just gets away. We know that Scott and co spend a lot of time dealing with the shit she caused, and while she was ultimately captured and even executed off screen, she has a lasting effect on the last season of the show that nobody is really a fan of. I've seen a lot of hate directed at the actress, but honestly, I don't think she does that bad of a job either. The problems run much deeper than someone who is just trying their best with what they got. Still, only earns the bottom 3 spot for me. I waffled a bit on whether or not to give this spot to Scott, but in the end, I think the sheriff wins out for me. As far as development goes, I think that what we get from the sheriff is pretty good. In the first few seasons, his relationship with Stiles carries literally every single scene they're in, and I think it's the strongest parent-child relationship in the show, which is saying something because Melissa and Scott is also really solid. Once he becomes aware of the supernatural, you completely buy his reaction. From not really believing at first to his confused understanding of everything, it just makes total sense. He doesn't take bullshit and he doesn't compromise his morals in order to benefit the supernatural characters. I actually think that the way the show frames his unwillingness to break the law in Season 5 and in Season 6, in regards to the Chimera bodies and the attack on the police station, is a little unreasonable. He's literally the sheriff. He can't just look past all the dead bodies. They find a solid middle ground, so it works out in the end, but I wish they explored that more. Monroe gets mad at him for the same thing, but I think it tends to get overlooked since people hate her so much. I also think that the sheriff is one of the characters who comes out of the movie the best, since he may be one of the only surviving characters who isn't butchered in some way by the plot. I don't hate the movie as much as most people, but it's kind of crazy that almost everyone except for the sheriff either dies or undergoes character assassination. Still, he's not quite the best character in the show. Third place is still a medal though. Ooh, hot take. I want to preface this with the fact that I don't hate Peter. I just think his character has some really unnecessary development throughout the series. I don't equate his whole being softened by the love of his daughter with good character development, mostly because it is a complete 180 for his motivations. In Season 1, his character is really easy to understand. He's a victim of a mass killer, one who absolutely sucks even if she doesn't make this list, and that places him pretty securely on the side of justified villain. He goes about it pretty badly, what with the murder and all, but it's highly motivated and is charismatic enough that even after he dies the first time, the creators knew they'd be better off bringing him back. And that's when things start to go downhill for me. Immediately, we know that Peter is interested in power. Presumably, he got a taste for it when he was the alpha, and he continues to want more. This isn't unusual because this also happens to Derek, but Peter never really wants it enough to kill more of his own family, but he's lurking and smiling and thinking about it all the time. This is in line with what he wants, so I guess that's fine. In Season 3, when he kills Jennifer for good, he declares that he's the alpha out of pure delusion, and in the 4th season, he's unknowingly the villain again and sets up the plan to kill all the supernaturals in town as part of his revenge. But he doesn't actually take any of those actions himself. For someone who claims to be all-powerful and is visibly interested in power, he just sort of sits back while stuff happens around him. Even in the 4th season, when he teams up with Kate, which is crazy enough to believe he would even do in the first place, he's just talk. He tries like once and fails, gets locked up, and then he's just blah for the rest of the series. Pretty much out of nowhere, his main motivation changes from wanting to gain more power to just wanting to be out of the way when shit hits the fan. Of course, he does do some good here and there when it benefits his relationship with Malia, but his drive for power is just completely gone. It's like his main character trait and it just disappears with no explanation. It's like they couldn't decide whether or not they wanted him to actually be a bad guy once they brought him back, since they knew fans liked him, but keeping him on the fence was probably the worst thing they could have done for his character. I still like him, and I know lots of people do too, but I really think that has more to do with fanworks and headcanons than anything else. The Peter in the show takes the bottom 2 spot. Haha, I bet I made some people mad by not putting him at number 1, but let's be honest. While Stiles is amazing, a good chunk of what people like about him is not because of his actual characterization, but just because of how likable Dylan O'Brien is on the show. As far as character development goes, Stiles doesn't have much. He becomes more knowledgeable and capable, sure, but inner character traits? He's already loyal and hardworking and sarcastic from the moment we meet him, and he's exactly the same way in the end of the series. He gets some points for being a contrast to Scott, since he's a little more willing to use violence and suggest letting their opponents die, but he doesn't really change any of his major traits as the show goes on. Don't get me wrong, he's fantastic in the scenes he's in. There's a reason that everyone remembers him, but the best parts are not his development, it's just his involvement. One of the best parts of the series is when Stiles is possessed by the Nogitsune and struggles with reality and control over his actions. It's no surprise that 3B is considered the best season by many, and it's largely because, unlike some actors on the show, Dylan O'Brien can deliver a fantastic performance despite whatever plot he's given. Unfortunately, the repercussions of his possession by the Nogitsune are not explored in any meaningful way. You'd think he'd be much more troubled in Season 4 considering the shit that went down, but he doesn't really react to any of it until Season 5, and more of the conflict in that comes from how he doesn't trust Theo rather than dealing with any of his past. They like to tease the Void Stiles thing in both Season 5 and Season 6, but it's so underexplored that it hurts. Overall, while I think he's a great character, he just can't take the top spot because I can't overlook how little character development he actually has. What's there is minor, and there are some other characters that edge him out of that top spot. Consider this a preview from my Season 3 review and recap video, but I do not like Korra very much. I'm sure those of you who know I'm a Sterek shipper are unsurprised by this, but let me explain. I don't hate the concept of this character entirely. Unlike some people, I don't actually think she's a carbon copy of Derek, a character I do like. She might have had pretty much the same backstory and more or less the same personality, but I don't hate her inclusion in the series on principle. I do hate the role that her character gets pushed into, however. It's really hard to unsee the fact that Korra sort of acts as Girl Derek and seems to exist entirely as an obstacle for Sterek shippers. It's pretty clear that the writers wanted Stiles to have some sort of romantic interest before he gets with Lydia for the endgame, and at first it was supposed to be Erica, but when she left the show they pawned that off on Korra, and it does not work. Their scenes in general aren't that bad, though they have to give her this mystery illness that's caused by the Durak, but happens after an injury from the Alpha Pack that just muddles the whole thing. Her illness doesn't even really affect her, since she barely has any bonds to characters on the show, but it does serve to take Derek down a peg since they were so upset with fans latching onto him rather than Scott. Derek loses his alpha status right around the time Scott becomes true alpha, and Korra is just a tool they use to make things inconvenient. And then the actress leaves the show and they have to try to pretend like she was never around. One throwaway line about her moving to South America and they can pretend she was never there.
You know I took Korra back to South America, right? It's where she spent most of her time after the fire.
Nobody but Derek ever mentions her, even when there are multiple instances that she could have been useful. And since that other show low-key flopped, they very well could have been in contact with Adelaide Kane to return for a cameo or something. But no, not even a mention in the movie, which was more about the Hales than any of the seasons since she was introduced. It's just so messy. She ends up coming across as an attempt to de-gay a Sterek relationship, and when it doesn't work out, they just jump ship and try to pretend it didn't happen. Well, I didn't forget, and that's why she's near the bottom for me. But she's not quite the worst. That honor goes to Hayden. She has a lot of the same problems for me as Korra, minus the whole de-gaying thing, though some Theum shippers would probably point that one out too. When we meet Liam, he's a pretty good addition to the show. And then, an entire season later, we find out about this lifelong rival he's had this whole time that we've never even seen. I don't mind this entirely since it's common for shows to do this, since they didn't have this plot ready yet, but I digress. She's not the worst when she's introduced, but she seems to act more as a plot device for the characters around her rather than any sort of motivating character standing on her own. She does a total 180 with her dislike of Liam, seemingly out of nowhere, and then she dies by Dread Doctor solely as a means for Liam to go berserk on Scott. They bring her back, along with a few other plot-convenient characters, and then she pretty much immediately goes back to being a side piece for Liam. She gets the bite from Scott, which takes away one of the only unique parts of her character, which is the Were-Jaguar Chimera side that can sense berserkers, but since they were done with that plot, I guess they didn't really need that anymore. In 6A, she's pretty much just another body in any scene she's in, and the episode where she gets taken by the Wild Hunt doesn't even matter as much for Liam since Mason is also taken around that same time and serves pretty much the same purpose. Then, like Cora, she just goes away. It always stings a little more when the characters disappear in the middle of a season, like with Cora and Hayden, since those plots tend to be more strongly connected, so it just sucks. The worst thing is that 6B doesn't even suffer without her because she wasn't contributing anything in the first place. I have made it pretty clear that Derek is my favorite Teen Wolf character, and I can't in good conscience put him as number 1. I do, however, think he has some of the strongest character development, so I had to mention him here. I do intend on making a full deep dive of Derek's character as its own video, so I'll try to keep this brief. Season 1 Derek is mildly confusing since he doesn't really seem to have too much motivation. His whole driving force is that he's looking for who killed his sister, and unfortunately he gets sidetracked by having to help Scott figure this out. But when he finds out, he just joins up with Peter. By the end of the season, it's clear that this might have been part of his effort to get revenge on Peter and take the alpha power for himself, and this leads to the worst Derek we see, Season 2 Derek. Derek's motivation in the second season is pretty much just to get more power. Now that he has some, he's a little corrupted by it, and it leads to a bunch of questionable decisions in his attempt to grow a pack. It's also partly because he knows the alpha pack is coming, but that's neither here nor there. In the third season, he has a pretty big character moment when he refuses to continue seeking this power by killing his betas. For the first time, he might actually be learning something. Of course, since Derek can't have nice things, it all goes to shit and he ends up pretty much packless anyways. Every single person he bites ends up dead or in Europe, and both his family members and Scott do not want to be part of his pack. And then he loses the alpha status anyways. Might as well be his low point. He realizes in Season 3B that he should take up the role his family used to and become a protector for Beacon Hills, which is great development for him. It's kind of an extension of his Season 1 motivation since he's looking for family and meaning in Beacon Hills, but he sort of drops this in favor of personal development in Season 4, where he learns about his family further and becomes an evolved wolf. Woo! The whole staying in Beacon Hills as a protector thing doesn't work out, since he leaves town and also the show for years, but in the movie he's back and undertaking that whole protector thing again, so I will give that a pass. In the grand scheme of things, this is almost the most influential character development of the series. He goes from being an asshole almost all the time to being a de facto protector of the entire town, which is pretty much a 180, but unlike other characters with such a drastic change, you actually have the plot lines and the on-screen moments when he makes these changes, rather than just happening for plot convenience. Good job, Derek. But still, there's one more character who beats him for the best character in the show. This might come as a shock to people who have watched my Season 1 and Season 2 videos, since I'm pretty harsh on Lydia's involvement in both of those seasons, but starting with Season 3, Lydia gets a lot of opportunity to develop. In the first season, Lydia is very much a popular mean girl cliché. She has some hidden traits that make her stand out, but her motivations are solely for herself. She wants the hottest boyfriend, the most popularity, etc. When she's bitten, there's a bit of a wrench in that, but she's still pretty popular, so it works for her. Her real development starts in the third season when she finally finds out she's a banshee, and for the rest of the series we see a gradual growth in Lydia as she learns about her powers and how to be stronger, while also letting down her walls and making real connections with the other main characters. Not just Stiles either, since she has great connections with Malia, Scott, and some of the adults like Argent and the Sheriff. I'm going to ignore the Stiles excuse in the movie, but she proves time and time again that she's one of the most reliable characters in the series, and if you look at Lydia in Season 6 and compare it to the Lydia in Season 1, they're practically two different people. Just like with Derek, we actually get to see this progression, and it makes her the best character in the show. Better than Scott, better than Derek, better than Stiles. But what do you think? I know some of these were probably hot takes, but I'm curious to hear yours. Who's your favorite character? Is it Stiles or does someone else take it for you? If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm working my way steadily through the series, so every subscriber counts. Until next time.